Hello and welcome back to another writing support video. Today I'm going to be tackling the short answer question from the 2019 exam, the third one that covered the Chesapeake and the Middle colonies. So a quick review here of some of the major components of the short answer question. It's the second part of the exam and you have just over 10 minutes per question approximately. And as far as period 2 goes, it would only be covered on question 3, which is a choice. You have a choice if you would like to answer question 3 or 4 on the exam. So one of the key things to know is that each point is earned independently. So you can earn point C without earning points A and B. It doesn't matter. And one of the biggest errors that I see when grading AP exams is that students don't describe enough. So my top 3 tips for short answer questions are to use evidence and explain it. Make sure you're including proper nouns, but don't just name drop. Make sure to then explain what that term is. Answer in any order. So really start with the questions that you know the most about, and be direct. 2 to 4 sentences is plenty. Other simple suggestions here that you can read through, but really want to focus on the idea that you don't need topic sentences, no thesis statements. You can just dive right in and get to the point. So period 2 on the exam accounts for 6 to 8% of the total exam covered. And like I already mentioned, the only short answer question that could potentially cover period 2 would be the third one. The 2019 exam question 3 focused on learning objectives C and J, which is all about the development of the British colonies. So here is the prompt from 2019. A. Briefly describe the difference between the economy of British North American colonies in the Chesapeake region, such as Virginia and Maryland, and the economy of the Middle colonies, such as Pennsylvania and New York. And then part B is to describe a similarity in the economy of those two regions. And then part C is to explain a reason for the difference in the reason for the difference in the economy. So at this point, you should know whether or not you feel confident in this material. And it's very challenging to try to answer a short answer question if you don't have the content. So I'd encourage you, if you're feeling that you don't have it, to check out the videos that I have already done describing the Chesapeake and the Middle colonies. And once you feel confident in that material, come back. A quick note about comparison prompts. You want to discuss both aspects of the prompt in each of the parts, unless it specifically states to only address one. So in this example, you would want to make sure that you are addressing both the Chesapeake and the Middle colonies in each part. So that means your responses will likely be closer to 3 sentences. And here's the format that you should follow. So for part A, when you're describing that similarity, I think that's actually part B, you want to state what the similarity is. And then in your second sentence, describe what that is like for the Chesapeake with evidence. And then in the third sentence, describe how it is applied to the Middle colonies. Doing this will ensure that you are being clear and doing everything necessary to get the point. So now go ahead and actually pause the video and set a timer for yourself for about 10 to 12 minutes and go ahead and practice writing this question out. Now that you have it written out, check your answers. Did you include specific evidence? Did you explain your evidence? Did you fully answer the question? And if you labeled, are your labels correct? Now here is the rubric. Here are some of the sample answers that you could have included. You can pause and read through them, but here is a sample. While both colonial regions produced cash crops, the degree of their reliance on agricultural production differed. The Chesapeake depended heavily on the exportation of tobacco, while the Middle colonies had more of a mixed economy. The Middle colonies exported cereal grains as well as engaged in the fur trade and shipbuilding. So there I followed the format. I described what the difference was, the reliance on agricultural production, and then I described the Chesapeake, and then I described the Middle colonies. For part B, we're doing a similarity here. So again, you can pause and read through those, but here is an example. The Chesapeake and Middle colonies were both reliant on trade with Great Britain. Raw materials such as tobacco in the Chesapeake and wheat in the Middle colonies were traded for manufactured goods. These exchanges were part of the broader trade system known as triangular trade. So there you can see I followed 3 sentences, but it wasn't quite exactly the format that I suggested. I gave what that similarity was, reliant on trade, but that's not a super specific term. And so that's why at the end, I also decided to include triangular trade just to make sure it's specific enough. And then finally, you need to provide a reason for the difference. And so here is the sample. A major factor that led to this difference was the environment and climate. In the Chesapeake, the mild climate, rich soil, and longer growing season allowed for abundant cultivation of tobacco. In the middle colonies, a slightly cooler climate and shorter growing season allowed for wheat to thrive. So I followed the format again, described what that difference was, the environment and climate, described it for the Chesapeake, and then for the middle colonies. So you can practice scoring here. Here's a response from a student from 2019. You can read through it and try to determine how many points this student would have received. It's a great way to assess whether you're really internalizing that rubric or not. And here are the College Board notes on this response. This student did earn a 3, and you can see that it gives the reasoning for it. They had some specific evidence as well as explaining it in enough detail to earn the point. So finally, how did students do on this part of the question or on this part of the exam? The average score was a 1.34 out of 3. So not an incredibly low score, but also not the highest that I've seen. And students often were very general in their responses. So they didn't have necessarily the specific evidence that was necessary to fully get the point. And that's often what we see on material that's learned in the early parts of the year. There's a harder time remembering those specific details when you're taking the exam in May. So here are the notes from the chief reader on how teachers should help students to improve their scores. And again, the biggest error, and that is geography. Students aren't um, remembering which colonies are part of which region. And we see this with comparisons of the Spanish, comparisons with the French and the Dutch. All of period 2, there just seems to be a little bit of a struggle with geography. And so that's something that if you're a student, you'll want to make sure that you're taking clear notes on so that when you're studying in May, you can come back and really make sure you're able to do clear, specific comparisons. So I hope that this video was helpful for you, and if so, please like and subscribe.